Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecki Lozano. Today, Father Joseph Lustig joins us on the podcast to share with us about how he got involved in the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd and how it has affected his understanding of children's spirituality, how it has affected his vocation as a priest. And he also shares with us a few tips on how we can get our own priests and deacons involved in the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Father Joseph Lustig is a priest in Boise, Idaho. He is native to Idaho, and he has completed formation for Catechesis of the Good Shepherd in both Level 1 and Level 2. He's been a parish priest for the last 6 years, and he's currently working on continuing his studies in canon law in Canada at the moment, where he also serves a local parish and in their atrium. I hope you enjoy. Father Joseph, welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah.
We are really excited to have you on the podcast. It was really wonderful to meet you at the 40th celebration last August in Phoenix. And so I'm really excited to get to hear your story now. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. So I'm a diocesan priest of 6 years ordained from the Diocese of Boise in the state of Idaho. And I want to be a priest since I was just a little kid from before kindergarten, probably 4 years old or so. Grew up in a very uber Catholic area, lots of Catholic families. They're all farmers or in the agricultural industry. Went to Catholic school growing up. Did nothing with Montessori or CGS at that point in time. Yeah, so that's and I got into CGS in my first parish,
which was in Boise.
So it was in the southern part of the state, in the town of Twin Falls, in the city of Twin Falls. Really, so I was the second priest, right? What they call the parochial vicar. So I wasn't fully in charge. A couple of the moms, the religious ed director who I was close with, our kindergarten teacher, they had heard about CGS in the neighboring parish. They were offering a training, so they were wanting to do it, and someone had to approve to pay for their attending this training, at least for the staff members. And so I thought, well, I'll go too, just to see what it is. You know, I kind of have a philosophy in life that I don't want my staff to do something that I'm not going to do. So I decided to go, and mostly to see what it is, and then to check on to make sure it wasn't heretical or something like that. The formation leader was a little surprised. She did a good job, and we're still in talking terms, so that's good. But
so what did you decide? Was it heretical?
No, it was not heretical. Before this, because this is going to be for level 1, so it's going to be the preschoolers and the 3-year-olds coming from home, or 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And I thought, well, shouldn't they just be at home? Kids' religious formation should be at home. That's where it all begins. Their parents are their teachers. So I hadn't worked with little kids in education outside of walking through the hallway and the preschoolers see me, and they, I know some of their families maybe, but they don't know who I am in a particular way. But after we started CGS, I took the training, and we needed another catechist, so I had to start working in the atrium too. So I took a class once a week over. Then they really knew who I was, which was great because I was Father Joseph, but I was the one who led them to know Jesus probably better. To this day, some of those kids, I can go back. It's been multiple years, but I can go back and they're first, second, third graders or whatever. But they know who I am probably more than the other kids did at school because I spent more time with them, doing CGS in the atrium with them.
So what year was that you were formed and started being a catechist in level 1?
Yeah, so that would have been 2019, I think the summer of 2019. So my second year as a priest, about 5 years ago or so. And then, so I took level 1. We did, 1 year, the part 1 and part 2. And after I did it, I got moved to another parish, but I'm passionate about Catholic education and religious formation and what can we do. And so I'm always looking for the next thing. And I think this is going to be a very useful tool, a very useful way of not. I think I heard someone say, we're not trying to form, or we're not trying to impose a faith in the child, but we're trying to open them up so they can experience it better. The faith planted in them, it can come. We just got to, nurture it and grow it. And so I did the level 2 training then for the next 2 years. I'm getting ready to, whenever I can, make it to level 3 after I finish my doctoral studies I'm doing now at this point in time.
That's awesome. So you loved it so much that you wanted to keep going with your formation.
Yeah, I always tell priests, you got to have your thing, and as a diocesan parish priest, I'm kind of a general practitioner, so I had to know everything. But it's always good to have a focus, a place where, this is going to be my specialty within that. And so I always think forming religious education of the children would be one. And I thought, well, just let's pick a version of that. So hopefully when I get back into parish ministry, I'll be in a place that has an atrium where we can start an atrium and do more.
So tell me, after you did the formation in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, what really struck you? Like, what really captured your heart that made you want to keep going with formation and make this your focus?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's kind of like I have a question, like, why should the priest even be involved in 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds? We understand maybe more for First Communion. We can get there, so we got to hear their confessions and tell them what's right and wrong. But I think a lot of it, because as a Catholic priest, right? So I'm not married, and so I don't spend a lot of time with little children, except for the families that I spend time with. And I'm also the youngest in my family, so I didn't get to spend time with other siblings who are younger than me. And so after starting to spend time with the kids and seeing them, like presenting the works to them and seeing them engage with the work and coming to like these theological nuggets that you wouldn't normally think they would. So that was one thing, like seeing the child actually responding to this method. And then for me, as a priest, like it fulfills kind of this fatherhood part in me that I don't fulfill by having my own family, but I can really do with spending time with the kids. So kind of this desire to be a father, but also in a funny way, confirming my desire to be celibate as well, because afterwards I go home and it's quiet. And so it's the best of both worlds in a sense. But just, to be able to be, if we want to kind of really grow our Christian faith out in the world, I think we got to start with these littlest of kids. It's a long-term goal, but it's a process that I think is going to be very useful to get those essential mysteries to the children from a very young age. That essential part that Christ has died, but Christ has risen, and He wants to give His life to us.
Mm-hmm. Did the formation change the way that you look at children?
Yeah, it does. It changed definitely the way I interact with children. I'm now trying to be. I try to go more out of my way to know a child and speak maybe directly to a child, and also just be more aware of what can we do for the younger children. Because a lot of times we focus on like teenagers, and especially in the U.S. where we do confirmation usually in an older age, and so that's like when we're focusing a lot of our work. We could be doing more at those younger ages, just knowing that they can absorb so much more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hear in what you're saying, in like the dignity of even the youngest person has really been highlighted to you through this formation.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
What about your vocation? How has your formation and your work with children, how has that changed your vocation in any capacity?
I think, well, just one thing, maybe just in the practical matter of like, where do I want to put my all my quarters, or in my priestly life, is definitely the practical matter, being more involved in religious formation, helping our volunteers and our staff and our teachers in that place. And then, like I said, we're always looking for ways to be better fathers, especially as a priest. And when we're working with the children, that's a very, very practical response, because that's an important part of the priestly life, is what it means to be a spiritual father, what it means to be a spouse of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be fulfilled in a very special way by working with children. And healing also, there's a lot of a lot of priests are made more scared of children, because maybe with sex abuse scandals and things like that. But I think the more we have these fulfilling places of encounter with a child, it's going to bring fruit from that.
Right. Healing on both ends. I agree. What about, I know for myself, when I did formation, the Mass really came alive for me, even though I had been to Mass my whole life. But the different aspects that we lift up, especially in the level 1 atrium, for example, the mingling of water and wine just had so much meaning to me. For you, as a priest who have had extensive formation more than most of us, did you feel that same effect after your formation?
Yeah, so I think, well, the main thing I noticed was the geography worked, because that was a lacking place in my formation and seminary. But in Mass, this is often people will ask a priest, like, what's your favorite part of Mass? And a lot of priests will say, well, it's I say the words of Jesus, change bread into the body of Christ, or when I'm preaching. But for me, and maybe I think I discovered this after going through the CGS formation, my favorite part is at the end, after communion, when we are cleaning all of the sacred vessels we use, what we call the purification of the chalice and the paten. And so you're just pouring water in there and wiping it out and drying it and putting everything back together again, because it's a restoration of the work, is what it is. But in that restoration of my work, that's one of the few times for me as a priest when I can actually pray, just my own prayer, and I can meditate and either in the silence of the church or as everybody else is singing their songs. This is my time to restore my work and reflect on what I have just done. And so that's always a fun part. And in fact, I had Mass yesterday with a family who's homebound. The father is very sick, and they noted after Mass, you sure seem very intent on what you're doing at the end, because they can see me, because we're in the living room and they can see exactly what I'm doing. So I think that's been a part of that for sure.
That's really interesting. It's like the full work cycle during the Mass, the work of your hands, restoring the chalice, and it being reflective, almost like what we talk about with practical life. It allows your mind to go into this deeper state of contemplation through the work of your hands. So it's interesting to hear you apply it to what you were doing after communion.
Yeah, this formation gave me words for that, because as a farmer, that's something we always do, right? You always have to put things away and clean it up, and so it's ready to go the next time. Your machinery won't run. So it's kind of ingrained in me, this sense of the value of work and the value of restoring your work. But now I'm experiencing that on the spiritual level, which is kind of exciting.
That's really beautiful. I like that a lot. So, as a priest, what would you say to other priests to help them understand this work on a deeper level, and maybe to help them in their discernment to understand this work or participate in this work or adult formation?
Right. Yep. Yeah. That's. I think that's going to be something I'm going to have to answer more often, because I'm a priest who's more involved in CGS, and so I'm always keeping a list of what do you do to involve your priest in the gift of CGS. I have A, B, and C. I have three things. I mean, I think there's E. There's up to E now, but as we always know, there's like often when I go to other parishes here where I'm at now, in Canada where I'm currently doing studies. Like often you'll hear the story like, oh, Father, like how do I involve my priest? Or you'll hear the really sad story like the mean pastor, he just closed my atrium, or we had to move to another place, or all these things. It kind of sounds like what we do in canon law when we relegate a church to profane but not sordid use. It's canon 1222, but we don't have that for the atrium, but it's often that exists in places where you're kind of shut down or you have to put on hold for a while. So I think, what is it? The 32 characteristics of reflection, number 31, I believe, is every atrium avails itself to the help of a priest who is attentive to the children, particularly to their religious capacities, celebrates the Eucharist and the sacrament of reconciliation with them, and works in harmony with the spirit of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. Right? That's a really good ideal there. So what would be your plan of attack? I would say, number one, send your priest to the formation training, right? Because if that's the only way to really see kind of the goal and the purpose of this style of education. Unless the priest had experienced Montessori work when he was a child, it'd be really hard to explain why you need all this extra stuff, and all this time of formation. But in, like, say you have a seminarian there for the summer, a lot of seminarians will do summer assignments. A lot of trainings happen in the summertime. Just make a deal with the priest. We're going to send him to this training. Just give him something to do, because parishes are not as busy in the summertime, and that might plant a seed for the seminarian to expand a little bit. I know Kansas, I think it's out of Kansas City or out of Wichita. They have trainings for priests. They had like 6 priests or something that have done level 1. That's something that's amazing that they had 6 priests that want to do it. Doing it together with other priests builds that fraternity with one another. So that's always a good thing. But that's a high ideal, right? But invite your priest to observe in the atrium, right? Ask him to stay for at least an hour. Don't just pop your head in, look, say hello, and walk away. Let them actually watch the children working. And better yet, my third one is to teach your priest how to do one of the works. Not just like the sacristy tour, which is great. Okay, have them like vest in front of the priests, or if you're level 2, have them do your confessions and your retreat stuff. That's all really good, and knows how to do those things. But teach him how to do one of the works itself. I was telling this to one of the missionary charity sisters, and she said, "Well, Father, no priest wants to be taught by the nun." And I said, "Sister, I would love to be taught by you right now. That'd be my ideal. Who doesn't want to be taught by little Mother Teresa, right?" But there's various works and presentations that are really priestly. I think of the Eucharistic presence of the Good Shepherd. If you give the priest the script, teach him how to move the items around, and give him your star pupils. The ones that are going to say, "I'm one of the sheep," and the one who's going to say, "You are the Good Shepherd." And that's just that melts the priest's heart right there, because little Johnny, who's 5 years old, is telling him that he's the Good Shepherd, feeding him. And then, like liturgical gestures, you might want to teach a priest how to do them first, because sometimes they don't know what they're doing. I didn't say that. And then the altar work. And my favorite, that when I saw it in level 2, I thought this is the best work. The origin of the Eucharist.
It is the best work, right? I love that one.
Yeah, because then the priesthood, and I have that in a homily at least twice a year. That whole movement saying we need someone to be Peter, to take up this job for the church. And if they're doing that, then they might witness that religious potential of the child unfold before their eyes, and that would draw them to at least be more appreciative of what's happening, because it's hard to see it from the outside, but when you're inside, you can see some of these things happening. My last 2 would be put your CGS works into other parts of the parish, like bring the books of the Bible to your RCIA adult faith formation class, do the gifts of the Holy Spirit with your confirmation students, bring the maxims to the youth group, or the baptism presentation for the parents and godparents as they're getting ready for baptism. It's just a way to see the theology and the practical theology being applied in other areas of their life. Or invite a priest like me to come talk to your priest, and little brother to brother talk on what's going on. Or you can send a formation leader to a diocesan gathering of priests. They gather 3-4 times a year. Give them a 10-minute presentation on what is CGS, or what do we do with liturgical works? What do we do with the Bible works? To kind of plant seeds in the priests so they know what's happening in the atrium.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah.
Our priests and deacons, about once a month, they have a meeting where they talk about all the things that they need to talk about. And they also talk about the homilies for that month. And once were able to be their opening prayer, because the gospel that was coming up was the parable of the insistent friend. And so we asked them if we could show them that presentation as their opening prayer, as a way for them to serve them, to help them, but also to see another way to present this parable, especially to children, like for the children's mass. That's another way that we kind of plant those seeds of CGS in their hearts, and in the way that we present to children.
Right. Yeah. Because it does affect, I preach. I have all sorts of styles of preaching, but sometimes I do more CGS style preaching, and it's often people after Mass say, Father, I like you kind of said it in a very plain way. We understood it, But I have my poetic homilies and my theological homilies too, and my silent is when I don't have anything to say. But
Okay, so out of all the CGS books that you have read, do you have a few that would be your top recommended books for a priest or a deacon or a seminarian?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think like Anne Garrido's Preaching with Children. I think
Yes.
that's a useful book because it's short and pretty concise, and it does her. She begins with a kind of a review of what we do in CGS, and then
Mm-hmm.
what the child is, that mystery of the child, and maybe how that mystery of the child meets the mystery of God. And then, like, I just gave a presentation for Catechesis in a neighboring parish, kind of a little formation night before they start their year, and they don't have a CGS in their parish, but it's just a bunch of moms that do the first communion, and they're even doing a 3-year-old ministry this year. So I was reading through some of the books, and even the religious potential of the child, number one. Now that I've read, I read half of it the other day again, and I think maybe the second time through, I'm just more aware of the
Mm-hmm.
aspects that they're speaking of, but just really bringing out the religious potential of the child, that basic nugget that they observed, that the ladies observed in Rome when they first started, how that child is just so able to speak so much, and how they say, like, it's 2-3 year old, that's when they're the most ready to be formed. And then I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, we miss so much. We gotta, like, how can we better inform our moms and our dads at home so that they don't miss that essential period in their life.
Yeah. That book is amazing. It's one of those books that, at least for most of us, when you first start in this work of Catechesis of the Good Shepherd and you start reading Religious Potential of the Child, most of it goes over your head because you haven't learned, it hasn't had time to seep into your soul yet. And after you've really moved into this work a little bit more and you reread the Religious Potential of the Child or listen to it now that we have it on Audible, it's so profound, so profound. Sophia has these like mic drop things that she says. And it's exactly what you said about the religious potential of the child, the very young child. And if we miss it, it's not like the window is closed. People can still fall in love with God at any point in their life, but there's just such a beautiful sensitivity to it at this very young age that makes it so easy for them to fall in love with God, for them to know how deeply God loves them. Who
Yes.
wouldn't want their child to have this as their foundation in their relationship
Yeah.
with God? That
Yeah.
beautiful acceptance of love at that very young age. And Sophia saw it. She wrote this whole book about it. I would agree with you. Those are two really great recommendations.
Of course, the parable of the precious pearl, I think, is always one I always repeat a lot often when a question comes up. I say, okay, what do we have to sell in order to get that pearl? And maybe we have to essential. What is the most essential thing in my religious formation now in my parish or in my family? And it may not be CGS. Like I say, you're thinking as a family at home, mom and dad, what's my most important thing? But that comes to, like, what can I do best to form my child in the faith and allow them to love the Lord and receive His love, so they don't enter the world malnourished, but they can enter the world full of fruit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Deep roots in their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, Father Joseph, is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we finish today?
I think that's kind of what I was. That's what I was looking at. Yeah. And just take hope, take courage that our work can bear fruit, even if we aren't seeing it, and be patient with the bosses in our lives, whether it's your priest or your bishop or the religious ed director or the principal in the school. That we slowly move into to helping the children encounter the Lord in a deeper way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Father Joseph. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast. In our show note, I put some links for past podcast episodes that we have had some other priests on the podcast, such as Bishop Talley, who spoke about Catechesis of the Good Shepherd and Christian unity. We had Father Boniface Hicks speak into the connection between CGS and accompaniment in spiritual direction. Father Kevin Douglas shared his story about how he got involved in Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, and Father Joseph Hicks shared about his story as well as connections he sees between CGS and Ignatian spirituality. So check out our show notes for links to those episodes. We also have the audiobook of The Religious Potential of the Child available to you. We also want to encourage you to become a member of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. In becoming a member, you have access to many member-only things that we have on our website, as well as you will receive in the mail our annual journal. So please consider supporting our work in the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd by becoming a member. We also have an organizational members for parishes, dioceses, schools, regional groups to become an organizational member as well. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. We would like to thank all of our contributing members because you are making this podcast possible. If you would like to learn more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd or become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.